Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Read and Write with Natasha. I have with me today Harrison Stockland, who's an American author, and his take on the crime thriller genre is defined as twisted originality, incorporating real historical events and environments into his fiction novels. And it's his signature style. His debut crime thriller, Watch It Burn, is outperforming industry expectations at an exceptional rate. When you read Harrison's novel, you can expect to be challenged, shocked, and left clinging to the very last line, wondering how you never saw it coming. Wow. Harrison, thank you for joining me today. I can't help but notice how young you are.
Yeah.
So this is this is very inspiring, Harrison. So I would like to start by asking you about your writing journey. At what age you started, and how did you manage to have a book that did so well at a young age? So the floor is yours, Harrison. If you can tell us a bit about your writing journey.
Yeah, well, for sure. So I started writing when I was about 16. Well, I was 16.
Okay.
That was during COVID. So if you do the math, I'm 20 now,
Okay.
almost 21. So still very young. I think when I talk about being a young author, I'm definitely at the bottom of that barrel in terms of age. But yeah, I started when I was 16. It was really just a hobby. I ran out of things to do during, the lockdowns that everybody experienced. And so I decided, I wanted a new hobby. And at the time, the only things I was really doing was reading and working on a sailboat that I had. And so I just decided, I was like, you know what? I've been reading a lot of books. Like, I might as well try and write one. So I wrote my first book when I was 16. It was 130,000 words, 128,000 words around there. So
Oh, wow.
pretty long. And it was terrible. It was awful. Nobody's ever gonna read that. It's gonna, I still have it. I'm keeping it, but it's staying in the bowels of my computer. It's not gonna ever get out and see the light of day. And I think a lot of authors probably have similar stories and similar projects like that nobody else is ever gonna see, but it's good practice. And after that one was done, I was really kind of, I finished it. I wrote the end at the end of it on the last page, and then I think I would just, that same, sitting at my desk, I opened up a new Word document and started over with a different story. So, I've always been a creative person, and I've always had plenty of you know of stories to tell. I've always been a talker. I've always been a social person. And I've always enjoyed stories. Like since I was really young, I've loved movies, especially. I'm probably one of the few authors you'll run into that will tell you that I enjoy movies more than I enjoy books. Now, I absolutely love books. Obviously, I'm an author. Reading is one of my favorite pastimes, but I love movies. And so I've always enjoyed stories. I've had respect for great storytellers, and that kind of just kicked off my journey as an author. And I haven't stopped writing since I first started typing on that first story. So
Oh, wow. So, so Harrison, you're, young and active. And I'm curious, what kind of discipline do you have? Like 20-year-old men, let's say, more like they want to party, they want to go out, and the
yeah.
discipline of sitting, and especially now with, like, I see it with my kids, they're always on TikTok or whatever. And how did you develop this discipline? How did you resist the temptation of just partying all the time and do this?
I mean, I give a lot of credit to my parents. I think without the two specific parents that I had, well, I still have them.
Mm,
The two specific parents that I have, I wouldn't be anywhere near as successful or driven as I am right now.
okay.
I will always give credit to them because I think they took what had the potential to be a very difficult child, and they turned me into something that was willing to work hard, and they turned me into a person that I'm learning to respect, which is something that I think a lot of people struggle with. I think that self-respect is a part a part of the motivation thing. I think if you don't respect yourself, there's no reason to better yourself, right? Because if you have a really low opinion of yourself, I mean, you're not going to invest in something you don't like. I mean, if you think about it, if you don't respect a person, they're most likely not going to be your friend. You're not going to care about them, and you're not going to spend time trying to make them better. And the same goes for yourself. So they really instilled that in me from a young age. At the same time, I was also a swimmer in high school, so I was always on the swim
Mm,
team, since I was a little kid. And that's a year-round sport. It's not like a lot of other sports where you have your season and then you have maybe a couple camps in the summertime or whenever the off season is. Swimming is a cardio sport, so you're involved all year round, staying in shape, things like that. And those are 3-hour practices, thousands and thousands of yards. You're going miles a week. Um, and so those things kind of contributed really strongly to my discipline, at least
mm,
in the early stages. And then there's also the kind of the cliche thing where they say, if you love something, it's not really hard work to do it, and it comes easy. And that is true with writing. Like I don't think I've ever once sat down at my computer to write and have thought, like, oh, I wish I was doing something else, or I wish I could go do this or go do that. I've always loved it. I think I always will love it, and I think that's the main reason. I mean, it is the main reason I do it. But Wayne Gretzky, one of the greatest hockey players of all time, he always talked about, because people would always ask him, like, how much do you practice and what do you do and all these different things, and he's like, I never really had to practice. Like, I was never forced to practice. I lost track of the hours because I enjoyed it so much.
mm.
And that's something I really resonate with, especially with writing, because there are things in my life that I don't like doing and I put them off and I procrastinate and all those things. Um, but writing is one of my favorite things to do. I'd much rather do it than watch a TV show or play some video games. But like you said, I'm 20, so I do enjoy those things still. I play games and I watch movies and TV shows and I go out with my friends and things like that. But I do have priorities in my life, and writing is definitely at the top of that list. So
Oh, wow, good for you. So you mentioned that you have this let's say signature writing style, which is the twisted originality. What is that? Can you explain that to us?
yeah, so um, when I say twisted originality, what I mean is I like taking, because you can go out and you can look, and you could grab a cart full of books, and most likely you're gonna find a few different versions. Maybe you're gonna find probably 100 versions of the same 4 or 5 stories, right? So there's a few
Okay.
different story tropes that people really enjoy to tell, and some people tell them like really well. Like you have things like you know, Harry Potter, Percy Jackson, they're, Chronicles of Narnia. They're all a very, very similar story. Star Wars, that falls in that pile. It's a very similar story about a hero who's the quote unquote chosen one, and then they have to rise up and defeat, pretty much the biggest embodiment of evil in that universe. And so there's lots of tropes like that, and that doesn't mean they can't be done well. But I don't really enjoy using those in my storytelling. So what I like to do, and I've done it a few different times, some of it does involve spoilers, so I'm not going to get too deep into it, but
Okay.
I like to take classic stories or thought patterns and kind of flip them on their head. So for example, if you have, like, I'll use this as a good example. If you have two people that are really good characters in a book full of gray and bad characters, and they're together, let's say they're in love, it's a guy and a girl, and they seem perfect for each other, and they're really likable. Not really anyone else in the story is likable, and they seem like they're the main characters. I would say probably by the seventh or eighth chapter, they're gonna die. And that's gonna kinda kick off the rest of the story, because and I think that grabs your attention, 'cause you're thinking, "Well, these 2 are gonna be together through the thick and the thin, and we don't have to care about these other people that don't have their act together, and they're evil, and they're this and that. They're not the moral authorities." And I think that's a much more accurate representation of how some of these stories would play out in real life. Like, I think sometimes in these stories, especially in the genres I've been writing in, which has been crime, the good people do finish last. If in these situations I put my characters in, you have moral qualms about doing something that would put you ahead. you're not gonna make it because the bad guys and the gray characters, they don't have those same issues. So I like taking that twisted take on some of the tropes. Another example I could give you for that is like if you're looking at that Harry Potter kind of Star Wars Messiah type storytelling. I've never written something like that, but if I did, I would most likely make that Messiah character, the chosen one character. I'd let them rise all the way to the top and defeat the evil. But then they would change, and I think they would start changing into what they were against, since their inception, and kind of play with that journey a little bit to make it more human, I guess.
Mhm. So I want to talk about your first novel, Watch It Burn. First of all, if you can tell me about your publishing journey. Did you self-publish? Did you get an agent? How did the publishing journey was for you?
Yeah, so I self-published my first novel. I did query several agents. I had
Okay.
some interest. I even got offered a deal. It wasn't the right deal for me, so I just decided I was going to self-publish. And I've enjoyed that. It's different than vanity publishing. Like I'm doing this as a business venture. I'm putting these books out there because this is what I want to do for a living. Right now I do have a day job.
Uh,
Um, I'm doing great in that, but I love writing and that's something I want to dedicate all of my time to. So, yeah, I self-published my first novel and my second novel. And really it was one of those things where the lie that I was told was that it's not that simple. You can't just go out and do it. Like it's going to be really
yeah.
tough and it's not going to turn out. That's not true. It's actually very simple. Amazon makes it insanely easy to self-publish. It's free. The only things I pay for an editor because I'm not a grammar guy. I was never good at grammar in school. So I have a good buddy now. He's my editor. He's amazing. He worked on my second book and he's going to be working on this next one coming out later this summer. Um, so I have an editor and I have to pay him, and then I have a cover artist that I absolutely love and I have to pay him. And so those are the two people I pay, and use some pay some money for some Amazon ads, and then I just publish the book and it starts selling copies. So it really is that simple. I mean, I'm not dumbing it down at all. I think anyone could do it. But having an editor and having a good cover artist are two very good investments. So I would recommend you spend the money on those. But yeah, self-publishing was the route I chose to go with. And who knows? I may go traditional, especially in the next couple of years. But right now I've been enjoying the self-publishing journey. It gives me a lot of freedom.
So okay. So you hired the cover designer and you hired an editor. Where did you find them? I like to ask
Yeah.
technical questions for anyone who wants to do the same thing. Like I know where to find them, but I
Yeah.
want the people who are listening to hear from you.
Yeah, so I found my cover artist on Upwork. I don't know if you've ever heard
Okay.
of Upwork, but
Yeah.
it's
Yeah, of
like a
course. Yeah.
you can get an app for it on your phone. It's also a website. But how Upwork works is you basically throw a project description, with some photos out into the ether. And then you get all these applications. It's almost like like a job application site, but for contract artists. So that's how I found my cover artist. And I'll tell you this, it is a little bit of a task to sort through the people that are applying for that. It'll take you a few hours because I put something out there for contract work. I didn't put a price on it. I wanted to see what people would want for that kind of work because I didn't know. The last cover artist I used was a friend of mine. So I got this guy for November's Whisper. So for November's Whisper, I had a different cover artist and a different editor than I did for my first book. So for my first book, both the cover artist and the editor were both friends or acquaintances through other people that I met and paid to do this work. And then the second round, I just changed it up. But yeah, so I sorted through all these candidates, and there were some weird applications, people that didn't really seem to understand the project or what I was looking for. That's fine. I just passed over them, and then I found this guy. He sent me an example right off the bat, looked amazing, and we went from there. And then with my editor, really interesting story with him. I don't think anyone else will be able to copy this, but my dad actually met him on an airplane. So, they
Oh,
were riding
wow.
on an airplane together. Yeah, it's gonna be hard to copy and paste that one, but, they were riding on an airplane together, and my dad was, either reading one of my books, right after it came out, or he was either reading the first book or he was talking to this guy about the first book. And this guy was like, "Well, I'm actually an editor. Like, he's been doing it his whole life. He's done all sorts of he's worked for all sorts of big magazine companies, like Sports Illustrated, things like that. Now he works for a transportation magazine out on the West Coast. So he does it for a living. Like that's his big boy job. And then on the side, he does projects for me, which is awesome. And I'm very lucky to have him. He's very talented. He knows exactly what I'm looking for, how deep I want him to go into the work, things I want him to pull out, things I want him to leave alone. And yeah, it's been a great working relationship ever since I started with those two. So
Oh, wow. What about the formatting of the book? It can be tricky.
yeah,
I like for me, I had to hire someone to do it. I just did not have the bandwidth to mess with it.
yeah.
What did you do with it?
Um, I agree. It's very tricky. It is frustrating. But I've been doing the formatting myself. So
Okay.
Watch It Burn and for November's Whisper, I formatted both of those books. So if your chapter looks a little weird kicking down the page, you can blame me. But I think I did a pretty good job. I actually took a small course on how to do it.
Okay.
And so I'm just kind of taking off. Word is very advanced. I think a
Okay.
lot of people don't understand, and I didn't understand that right off the bat. You think it's just a typing document, and that's all I used it for, but it's similar to Microsoft Excel, where it's very advanced, and you can with Excel, you can do all sorts of crazy formulas and things like that. Word is really similar with the formatting piece. You can do all sorts of really neat things and make it look, super professional. So I did learn that myself, and I've been doing that myself.
Sorry, my dog is barking. One
No,
second.
you're okay.
I'll take her upstairs or to- oh sorry. Yeah. See, that's why I have an editor. he's
Right.
he's used to my dog interrupting. But okay, so so you're doing it yourself, which is
Yep.
great. What about Amazon ads? Again, Amazon ads is I did it myself, but I did not get lots of good results. I think maybe I don't know the tricks to do it. So how did you do Amazon ads? How did you learn how to do it? And how you tell us about your results, your
Yeah.
ROI?
So I have kind of a different goal than a lot of people may have going into this. So my goal
Okay.
with a lot of different things like the book events I go to, Amazon ads for sure. It's not to make money. I'm trying to get my books out there as much as possible. So, like I said, I have a career, I have a job that I do, that keeps the lights on, keeps the house paid for, things like that. So the book, I'm really just trying to get it out there and get it to as many people as possible. So with Amazon ads, I'm not concerned about making a ton of money with it. What I mainly use it for is I really just want to break even with the ads based off of what I spend versus what I get back. And I've been pretty close. Recently it hasn't been as good because I probably need to go in and change things up again. They go and they update and change how different ads impact different folks. But again, it was same thing as the formatting. I just found a course for that, like a short few hour course that I paid for, and I did it myself. So because otherwise most of these firms or companies, they want you to spend money per month to use them. It's not like a one time like we'll set up your ads and you're good to go. It's like you got to pay them every month plus the ads, and a lot of times they're more expensive than the actual ads. So I was like, well, if I learn it myself, I can spend double as much money on the ads. So then yeah, I've been doing that for the past couple of years and it's been working out pretty well. So
Ah, good. Okay, good to know. Any places you recommend where we can learn about ads, or if you don't want to hire someone?
yeah, I can't remember the name of that course off the top of my head. I been looking at YouTube videos, and I found a guy who was selling a course, and the way he did that was he'd make videos about ads, and he'd be like, "If you want the whole thing, you just buy my course." So I did that. But maybe afterwards I can send you the link to that. I can go dig it up.
Okay.
But yeah, I would just start looking online. I mean, it's a lot of stuff. It's the same way I research for my books, is the way I found out how to do a lot of these things. Starts with a simple Google search, and you kind of find the rabbit holes to go down from there. And yeah.
So you mentioned you wanna eventually be like a full-time writer. Do you think that is, especially now where publishing is changing dramatically? Like in the past, you have to have an agent and a publishing house, and you used to send your manuscript in the mail, not even an email. Now, with Amazon publishing, everything is changing. Do you think really it's sustainable? Like you're still the beginning of your career, and if you want someday to start a family, all of that, you need a lot of money. Do you think uh, that is a sustainable career for you to do it, of self-publishing and selling book on Amazon?
I think so.
Well,
I don't know necessarily just selling off of Amazon. It would depend, right? It all depends on the audience,
okay.
and it depends on how loyal they are. So that's really the part of the journey I'm in right now, is building a loyal audience, and it's going great. I'm gaining a lot of followers. I'm gaining, like, my email list is getting really big. And I release 2 books a year. So I write for several hours every evening. Like, that's kind of what I do. I get home from work and I write until I go to bed. And so I'm
Wow.
able to release 2 books a year. And that's
No Netflix. You don't watch Netflix.
Sometimes on the weekends,
Okay.
but I do. Like I said, I love movies, so I always make time for movies, and I do have friends. A lot of
Okay.
people that watch these interviews always wonder if I have friends. I do. I have plenty of friends, and I enjoy time with
Okay.
them. I go on vacations and all that stuff, but it's really that day-to-day pattern of, like, I get home, and I eat and I shower and I write for at least 2 or 3 hours, and then, if I have time left before I have to go to bed, I'll figure something out. But, yeah, really, so I release 2 books a year, and that is enough content to keep, any loyal reader satisfied. So, I think
Mm,
I think if someone reads one of my books and they really enjoy it, and they find out that they can get 2 a year, they're gonna follow me pretty closely, and I've noticed that happening already, since I released my first book a little bit over a year ago. Right. And so that's been great. But my main goal is, like I said, building an audience. And then also from there, I'm not gonna limit myself to just books. Like I said, I've always loved movies, and I could see myself doing some serious screenplay writing. I've played with it as a hobby. I've never submitted one or published one or tried to sell one, but I definitely think in a very visual, very cinematic way. Like, when I see my stories, it's all visuals. It's, I'm not seeing the words laid out across the paper. I'm seeing this in terms of pictures, in terms of videos, and so I think that work would translate really well into film, and I could write. I have endless stories. I was talking to somebody the other day, and I was like, "Look, I'm about 10 story ideas behind." So, like, I have a list on my whiteboard of the next, probably 4 books, which is 2 years worth of writing, plus projects after that I'm still working on in my head. So I've got plenty of stories to tell. I'm not going to run out of content. To answer your question, I do think it is realistic. It's going to be hard and it's going to take a lot of work, but I'm willing to work for it. And life is gonna pay me the wage I demand of it. So if I work hard as an author, especially starting this young, it's gonna be really hard to fail as an author. And that's kind of just the way I think about it. And yeah, just onward and upward.
mm. I like the attitude, the mindset actually. So, all right. Um, so you write, you hire people, you self-publish, you put it out there, you sell it on Amazon. Okay, I want to talk a bit about marketing. You mentioned you're getting a lot of followers. How did you do that when you started? Pretty much unknown, young. How was your marketing journey, and what are your tips and tricks to get? people to read your book when you started as an unknown author?
Definitely starting with relationships. So I have a big sphere of people that I know. So already, like my first book, the day I released it, I sold like 180 copies just off of people I knew. Right, and this is like,
Who are these people? I'm just
well, it's
curious.
it's it's
Like
family,
friends?
friends,
Okay.
all these folks. I posted a few times, collected emails, so
Okay.
I had a list. Because people forget, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But like I've grown up making friends. I know lots of families, like all these people. So that's how it started. And then from there, like local bookstores, I've done several book events, done signings. Sometimes, four people show up, and then sometimes 85 or 100 people show up. So it just depends on the place. I'm doing one in Florida in April, and that's going to be a big, big one. It's probably going to be my biggest of all time, which will be awesome. And then we're going to go from there. I plan on doing many, many more of those events because those are the best way to reach, audiences. Not many people are doing book events these days. And it's funny because, like, I'm not a celebrity. I'm just a guy who writes books. But when you go to these book events, the readers are really excited to meet you as the author, not because they think you're a celebrity, but because it's a special way to connect with the art. Because writing, especially writing stories, is certainly an art. And so I think the readers kind of recognize that. And when they're able to connect with the artist a little bit, ask questions, especially if they've already read the book, and they know the content, they really enjoy that. So I've been doing that and just growing through those channels, but I don't do everything perfectly. Like, I'm really bad with social media. I maybe have 700 followers on my Instagram, maybe like 1,200 on Facebook. Like, I don't have a YouTube channel for my books, so there's things like that I could always improve on, but I'm doing what I'm good at and what seems to be working, and just hitting those hard, and it's been going well.
So basically, you're saying your marketing success comes from book events and your newsletter?
Yeah, yep.
How many subscribers do you have in your newsletter?
Just under 300. So last time I
Okay,
checked,
it's
I
not
checked a
bad.
couple weeks ago.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean it's not massive, but if you're able to get 70% of those people to buy your book on a pre-order, that's pretty awesome. So it's just, yeah, growing slowly. Like I said, I started with a little under 150, and that was a year ago. So doubled it in a year, and we're gonna see if we can do that again this year, and keep growing through these events and through the newsletter. It's a great way to send reminders too. Like, if you're starting out and you're going to self-publish, I wouldn't rely solely on Amazon. I have a website. It costs like $35 a month, and it looks really nice. It'll help you process all your orders, if people order through your website. And
Uh,
then also it comes with free email marketing, included with the price to run the website. And it's really nice because there's a lot of automated reminders you can use for things like, have you left a review? Have you
oh,
purchased the book? If they don't open the email, the website knows, and it'll send them another email in 3 days. So it's really intuitive like that. That's super helpful. But one thing, the biggest
what
thing,
is the platform? Sorry, what is the platform that you're using
Square.
for?
Square is what
Oh,
I
okay,
use. Yeah, not
okay,
Squarespace. They're different. It's just Square. If you go to squareup.com, that's what I use. You can customize a
okay.
website. I actually had a lady set up the website for me because I'm not a very tech savvy person. So I had her build the website. She has a website in a day program, and it was awesome. So the one thing I really struggled with, that I still struggle with, and maybe you can relate, is getting reviews. Getting
Mhm.
getting people to buy the book, is not that hard, especially if you throw in sales, or have like a discount or whatever. It's not hard to get people to buy the book, but getting to people to leave reviews is one of the hardest things. And it's not because they don't want to. It's just like they're like, really, I got to click through 5 pages and and find the website and then click the stars and then write something. I don't have time for that. Like, it's not because they don't want to, it's just because it's a hassle. So that's one thing I'm working on getting a lot better at, because like getting reviews is super tough. Like selling hundreds and hundreds of copies of books and then only having like 30 reviews is really really frustrating. So but that's one thing, we're working on and getting better at. So
Oh, wow. So you write for 2 hours a day. Well, that's that's really impressive. So, okay, what do you have in plans for the future?
story wise,
Mm-hmm. And
so
and publishing plans.
yeah, I mean, I'm always open to a traditional publishing deal. That's a great way to make a lot of money right away and get your books out there to big audiences.
Okay.
You get a big machine
Okay.
behind you that's promoting them. So I'm always open to a traditional publishing deal. That being said, the deal has to be right. Like I said, I've got a great job and a great career right now. I don't have to go get money from my books and use that to keep my lights on. I'd rather own my stories and control exactly what they look like, because the last thing I'd want is to sell my stories to a publishing company who then goes through, changes the title, changes the plot, changes certain characters, changes dialogue. Like, I've got some pretty gritty, violent, crass stuff in my books. And I think it needs to stay that way. I think that's how the stories are meant to be. It's impactful. Like, there's nothing in there without a purpose, but I could see a lot of publishing houses having issues with it. In fact, that was one of my number one comments when I was submitting Watch It Burn was they were really upset that I killed two characters that were really likable pretty early in the book.
Hmm.
Um,
Okay.
and I was like, that is the entire point of the story. And if you've read Watch It Burn, you understand how that works later on. And I'm 90% sure that most of these people I submitted the book to read to that point were like, you killed my two favorite characters, and then just closed the book instead of reading another couple chapters and realizing how the story was going to develop. So um I run into issues like that. I really my stories really thrive on violence, especially Watch It Burn. And so that's not really what a lot of these agents are looking for right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
Um they're looking for more, heartwarming, nice,
Romance. Romance.
stories. But
Romance. They want romance.
exactly, yeah, or like, it's all about who the trendy
Fantasy.
author is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Fantasy
mean,
and romance.
it's
Yeah.
about who the trendy authors are. So like
Correct.
Colleen Hoover is super
Colin
trendy.
over.
That's the kind
Yeah.
of stuff
Yeah.
she writes, and so great. But that's not what I write, and I'm never gonna write that. It's not what I'm interested in.
Okay.
Um, and so I'll smile and nod, but that's not what I'm gonna end up writing. And so, but I have hope for these type of stories. I mean, you watch different things that are popular, like True Detective is one of the most popular shows of all time on HBO. And I just released a crime thriller, November's Whisper, back in November. And it is very detective-esque. And then they released the new season of True Detective, and it got received with like great critical acclaim, and everybody enjoyed it. So that gives me hope, because it's one of those things where like people still enjoy these stories even though the agents might not want to be representing them. But like you said, the publishing landscape is changing, and so approaching publishers directly is becoming a lot more common. And so I do have a lawyer in my back pocket, and we're going to see about approaching some of these publishing companies directly, and see what that looks like. So there's all sorts of
Mm.
routes to go down. But yeah, I think my type of story definitely, like if you look at TV shows like The Boys, that's been out on Amazon, that's super gritty, over the top violent, like way crazier than my stuff, is insanely popular and critically acclaimed, right? Or you
Yeah.
look at, the new Jack Carr books that are doing super, super well about the rogue Navy SEAL that's going around just killing people. Like they're doing really well. So, somebody's reading these. And
Mm.
I would love to be the person that writes books that guys get into. Not explicitly. I love lady readers, but most of the readers I know and most of the people I sell books
Are
to are
women.
ladies. I want to get some of these
Yeah.
guys into reading, you know?
Yeah.
Um,
Guys don't read.
exactly.
That's,
And they're not going to read as long as, they're not you'll never see a guy with a Colleen Hoover book. I read one
I
just cuz
know.
it was popular and I wanted to see what it was all about.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I'm trying to kind of get into that space too where I can like extend an olive branch and be like, "Hey, you liked this, try this. It's gonna be fun.
Yeah.
You'll enjoy it."
Yeah.
You know, it all comes
But
back
like,
to
yeah.
writing stuff that I wanna read. So that's
Yeah.
that's that's how I do it.
Yeah, like my book club is all women. Have you ever seen a book club for men? Like
Nope, all
this is a
the book events I
yeah,
do, it's all ladies. Yeah, the guys that come out to my book events are guys that I know personally. Like, it's never some
yeah,
oh, that's not true. I've had a couple that have found me on Instagram, read my book, and like, "Oh, this is great," which is awesome, but it's only been 2 or 3. So,
yeah,
um,
yeah.
but yeah, it's
Interesting.
yeah.
So who's your inspiration? Who do you like to read? Who influenced you? You say you read a lot. So tell me
Um,
a bit of your
man, I really, really love, Dennis Lehane. Dennis Lehane's
mm,
probably my favorite author. He wrote Mystic River, Shutter
yeah.
Island, Gone Baby Gone, those really popular ones. Now there's some of his stuff that I'm not a big fan of, like, really, in my opinion, his stuff from the late '90s and early 2000s was his best work. I think now he's kinda biding his time. I feel like he's got a story in his back pocket that he's working on, but, like, the last couple books he's released have been, like, subpar by his standard of what he's released before, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Um, Stephen King, of course, is amazing. I'm not super huge into his fantasy or horror stuff, but things like The Institute or, The Outsider, things like that, I really, really enjoy his kinda
Yeah.
crime thrillers. Those are great. And then as far as nonfiction goes, I really have been reading a lot of nonfiction. So, Killers of the Flower Moon, that movie just came
Mm,
out a while ago, but I read the book beforehand, and that author, his name is escaping me at the moment, but he's amazing. I went through and read all of his books except for 1 or 2, and they're all amazing books. I
uh-huh.
love nonfiction, like, I'm really into political history, especially 20th century stuff, so, I'll every once in a while, I'll go out and get I read, like, the 600-page biography of Dick Cheney, like, super random, but it was really interesting, uh,
Yeah.
and so, things like that where you're like, "Yeah, this is not an everyday
I
thing,
would
but
never read that.
no,
Give me Colleen Hoover.
yeah, yeah. No,
uh,
but, like, I enjoy that stuff, and I get all of my ideas for stories from nonfiction. So, for example, November's
interesting, yeah.
Whisper is about an FBI profiler, and I came up with this idea after reading Mindhunter by, John Douglas and Mark Olshaker.
Mm,
John Douglas was the guy who kind of he didn't found the FBI profiling program, but he really got it off the ground, and kind of popularized it and proved the theories, right? Because before John Douglas kind of took over the program with his partner, it was kind of looked down upon, especially in Hoover's FBI back in the day. It was very like McCarthyist, straightforward. Like you got to polish your shoes and wear the right tie at work. And if you're a profiler, you're into voodoo and you're a weirdo. And he kind of broke that mold and proved through science with the help of a psychologist, a university psychologist professor or something. I think she practiced as well, but they worked together and they basically built this crime almanac and proved their theories, and then they used them to solve big, big, big cases in the late '70s and '80s. The probably the
mm,
most famous being the Atlanta child murders in I think 1984. And then he was also heavily involved in the Green River murders in that
yeah, of
investigation
the,
in the the entirety of the '80s. Though they didn't catch the Green River killer because of him. They caught him because of a DNA tool. came up with in 2003. But that being said, I read his first book, and then I read his second, third, fourth, and I got really into it. I kind of read those for a period of 3 or 4 months, and I was like, "There's a great story here," and I kind of worked
Yeah.
on that in my mind, and yeah, and I was very mindful not to just copy and paste one of the many cases in there, or use him as a character. Like, my character is my own character. My case is my own case. I made all this stuff up. And so, but yeah, like getting that information from nonfiction and being able to incorporate that is I think it's invaluable, and I think it brings back an originality that we've kind of lost in fiction. I mean, Dennis Lehane still does it, which I love, but like a lot of folks will just kind of slap a story together, and it just comes out, like I said, like all the other kind of disjointed fiction. It just sort of comes out, and it's like, and here's the new whatever. I don't want to get into names, but like,
Mm,
it'll just come out like that. And meanwhile, I like to look at it as like, okay, well, here's my story. I'm going to work to make it the best story that it could possibly be. So for this book, it involves a police investigation, takes place over 4 weeks. So I interviewed the former head of the state of a state police organization. I interviewed 3 or 4 detectives, and I also interviewed a former district attorney. So I spent a lot of time with these folks learning. I also read absurd things that nobody else would be reading, like police procedure almanacs and like things like
yeah.
I'm reading these like textbooks trying to find answers to some of my questions. And I think all that research really shows. One of my favorite reviews I've gotten on my book was somebody who wrote that my research shines through, because I mentioned it a little bit in the author's note. And that made me really proud, because that's not something a lot of people are doing these days. And it's takes research to make a successful story, especially when it takes place in a period about 20 years before I was born. So
Mm,
trying to understand the time period. Like, I wasn't around in the 1980s. I was born in 2003. So trying to understand those time periods and really make it as accurate as possible is definitely a huge part of my mission.
wow, this is great. Very inspiring. So, Harrison, what are the top tips you would give to aspiring authors, especially young authors like yourself?
If you've got a great story, make it the best story possible. You're gonna wanna just go, and you're gonna wanna just whip that thing out, and maybe you want to publish and you got it all figured out. You're gonna publish it. Go over it a couple times before you send it off to the editor. Think about alternate ways it can end. Never lock anything in. Like, I don't write stuff down. It doesn't help me. It only hurts, because the best way to immortalize a bad idea is to write it down. And so if I'm writing down exactly what's going to happen in the story, I can't realize, like, while I'm writing, oh, hey, this isn't actually how this is going to work out. I'm going to change it. It's going to go like this. So don't limit yourself like that. I also think this is something I struggle with, but I've kind of killed the bug. I think I'm almost there. I've almost cured it. But when I'm writing and I get about 75% of the way through a story, I'm really just thinking about the next one. And I really just want to get this one done, or just quit it and start the
Mm,
next one. I've never done it, but I've gotten really close a couple times, and you just can't
mm,
do that. You got to finish what you're working on, because if you do that once, you're gonna do it twice, and then pretty soon you're never finishing anything, and you've got 12 manuscripts that are 70% done. So
mm,
that's huge. And then just consistency. Like, you don't have to write 2 to 3 to 4 hours a day, but if you can sit down and write a page, I mean, a page is like 900 words on Word at size 12 font. So, if you can sit down and write 900 words a day, and your book's going to be 150 pages, you'll have a book, 7 months into the year. So, that is super huge. Consistency, and then following through and finishing what you started. I think those are the 2 big things.
hmm. This is great, Harrison. So, how can people find you on your website? How can they buy
Yeah.
your book? How they can contact you?
So you can find me on my website or on Amazon. On Amazon, if you look up my name, Harrison Stockland, it should pop up. If not, you can search November's Whisper. It'll definitely pop up. And then online, if you Google search Harrison Stockland, my website will show right up. But if you want to go directly there, it's www.officialharrisonstockland.com.
This is great. Thank you very much, Harrison. I'm actually inspired now, and I will. Yeah. So I mean, you're. I wish you the best of luck.